The Honourable Member for Elmswood Transcona.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I am pleased to rise to speak to Bill C-235. I think, it is clear that we need better cooperation between the federal government and the provinces and the territories in order to get serious about climate action. How do we know that that's the case? Well, we know that's the case because we haven't seen serious climate action. We just haven't seen our governments rise to the occasion and make the investments that we know we have to make in order to be able to have Canada do its part to lower its greenhouse gas emissions. And so clearly there's a need for conversation. So it seems difficult to oppose a bill that sets up a framework for that conversation and a mechanism to report out on that. I think it was interesting listening to the member for Lakeland. I think we have a very different take on the central message of this bill. I don't see this bill as an Ottawa's knows best bill. I think this bill is an admission that Ottawa doesn't know enough about how to take serious action on the climate change file. And I think that's a real disappointment to a lot of people that have been looking to governments, including the federal government, for leadership on climate action since the government was elected in 2015, promising that it would do exactly that. And, I think it's worth remarking on the fact that this is a bill being presented now by someone who's been a central player in that government, a former minister of natural resources, a former minister of international trade. I think if there's a disappointment in the bill, it's that there's no clear indication as to what kinds of projects we should be moving forward on as a country. Clearly, there's conversations that need to happen in order to be able to co-determine those priorities along with other jurisdictions. But the fact that we have somebody who's been a central player in this government for over 6 years now, that's been in power, whose main suggestion is to get the conversation going, I think is a real testament to the fact that Canada is not where it needs to be, and that this government hasn't lived up to the promises that it ran on in 2015, ran on again in 2019, and ran on again in 2021. I think the fact that, they went from having a comfortable majority in 2015 to just kind of hanging on by their fingernails in 2019 and then again in 21 is a testament to the fact that Canadians are watching, and they know that this government hasn't made good on its commitment to take serious climate action. So by all means, let's carry on this conversation. By all means, let's have some public reporting out so that there can be some accountability. But I don't think we can pass over in silence the disappointment at not having some concrete ideas about how we get there as a country. There are things that it would be nice to see the federal government and provinces and territories agree on in terms of investments. I look to our own region, and the region that's indeed the subject of this bill, Western Canada. And I think about some of the conversations that have happened and various reports that have been published about the possibility of a Western Canadian power grid, something that's about more than simple transmission between provinces, but actually trying to have a coordinated system of generation, transmission, and distribution, so that provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan, who have an enormous potential for solar and wind energy, can benefit from having neighbors in BC and Manitoba who have an abundance of hydroelectric power that can be used to even out the generation cycles of those other forms of renewable energy. That could be a massive benefit to Canada in terms of lowering our own greenhouse gas emissions. It's also a project that can create a lot of employment, both in the building and then on the ongoing maintenance and operation of the grid. And so, a lot of Canadians look to pipeline projects as a place to create construction jobs and to create ongoing jobs. But we can do that with a renewable energy infrastructure as well. And so 6.5 years of government by the Liberals and no real progress in terms of championing a large infrastructure project like that, I think is a real missed opportunity. And we're just running out of time to keep missing opportunities. So we need to get serious about selecting some of these opportunities. We need to get serious about investing in them. And we need to get serious about investing in them not as a kind of like one-off pilot or a little project here or there, but we really need a plan for the next 10, 20 years on how we're going to create sustainable infrastructure in Canada. That's important, not just in terms of having a sense of how we're going to do on our greenhouse gas emissions. It's important for work forecasts. That's what gives Canadians confidence that they're going to be able to go out and get a job if they're employed in the industries that build and maintain our critical infrastructure of this kind. It's also really important when we look at a stubbornly high unemployment rate, and we're going to talk about training. We need to talk about training, but we need to know what work is going to be there in the next 10 to 20 years. And certainly there's a lot of work that's going to be there just as a product of demand in sectors like, you know, housing and other places. We're going to continue to need tradespeople, but there's an opportunity here to lay out some ambitious projects on a timeline that allow companies and other actors in the sector. I think of my own union, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, that does a lot of good work in training electricians for the workforce. Having a sense of what kind of work is going to be out there that's going to be publicly funded as part of our effort to do our part in the battle against climate change allows those organizations to work with training colleges, unions, contractors to figure out how we supply the workforce that we need. And so that's why it's so, like, it's disappointing. This would have been a great bill in the year 2000, you know, and this would be lovely work to have done back then. It would have been great for the government to have done it in 2015. The information and the research is out there. So that's why these conversations are important between governments, because it's a matter of choosing those priorities and building that political will, in the absence of which we're simply not going to make progress. And as I say, we're really just running out of time to get this done. And to the member for Lakeland, I would say this isn't about whether government knows best or not. This is about there being a meaningful role for public investment in facing down the climate crisis and in training people for the economy. We hear all the time employers who are concerned that they can't find people with the relevant skills and experience to make their business go. They're looking to government for solutions on that. They're looking to have meaningful training programs that are publicly funded, at least to some extent. So those are things that actually the private sector is looking to government for. And we know that there has to be a role for the public sector in rebuilding the economy post-pandemic. And we know that there has to be a role for the public sector in taking on the climate challenge. So the idea that somehow there isn't a role for the public sector here, I think is just, it's certainly naive if it's true, or it's just sort of trying to, pass over the important role of the public sector here for the purposes of a political narrative that I think is doing more harm than good. We need coordination in order to meet the challenges of the climate crisis. We need coordination to meet the challenges of the labor supply shortage that we're facing, even in the face of a high unemployment rate. So we have this curious problem in Canada where we have a whole bunch of people that are looking for work and can't find it, a whole bunch of employers who are saying that they're looking for workers and can't find them. If the private market on its own was going to fix that, it would have done it by now. So there is absolutely a role for governments to work with all of those stakeholders and come up with a plan. So, ultimately this is a bill that's about planning. Fair enough. This is planning not only that we need to do, it's planning we should have done by now. And I think it's an admission. The fact that this bill comes from somebody who's been such a central player in this government is an admission that this government hasn't been doing that work, certainly not well enough. So, let's get on with this. I hope the government won't wait for the deadlines established in this bill, because I think they have enough information, or they should by now, in order to come up with a plan. I would hope that actually the conversations that this bill calls for are conversations that are already ongoing. If they're not, we got a big problem. So I'm comfortable moving the bill along, but I certainly hope that the government isn't going to take that as a sign that it can sit on its hands and wait another 18 months to start thinking seriously about how we take climate action in Canada. Thank you.